The divorce papers arrived with the soup. For one frozen second, every silver spoon in the private dining room stopped above white porcelain bowls. Nicholas Ward looked at the envelope in the waiter's gloved hand, then at his wife across the table. Clara Bennett did not look surprised. That was his first warning. The second was the young woman sitting beside him. Sienna Hale, his 28-year-old marketing director, slowly lowered her spoon with a tiny click. Her red mouth parted as if someone had opened a window in a room she believed was locked. The third warning was the waiter. He was not a waiter. He placed the envelope beside Nicholas's wine glass and said in a flat professional voice, "Mr. Nicholas Ward, you have been served." The room went so silent Clara could hear the rain tapping against the restaurant windows. Nicholas's mother, Margaret, clutched her pearls. His father stopped chewing. His younger brother stared at the envelope like it might explode. Sienna went pale beneath her perfect makeup. Nicholas laughed once, too loudly. "This is a joke." Clara folded her napkin and set it beside her plate. She was 46, with dark auburn hair pinned low, a black silk dress, and the calm face of a woman who had already screamed in a place no one could hear and was now done wasting breath. "No," she said. "The joke was you bringing your mistress to my anniversary dinner and introducing her as staff." Sienna's eyes snapped to Clara. Nicholas's smile died. Margaret whispered, "Mistress?" Clara turned toward her mother-in-law. "Yes, Margaret, the woman currently wearing the bracelet your son bought with our joint account." Sienna's hand flew to her wrist. The diamond tennis bracelet flashed under the chandelier. Nicholas leaned forward. "Clara, lower your voice." That almost made her smile. 21 years of marriage, and even in the moment his secret split open across the table, his first instinct was still to manage her volume. The private dining room at l'Orangerie had been his choice. He had wanted expensive lighting, old money walls, and a table long enough to make him look like the head of a family dynasty. He had invited his parents, his brother, 2 investors, and Sienna, whom he called essential to the new campaign. Essential. Clara had watched Sienna sit close enough for their sleeves to touch. She had watched Nicholas pour her wine before he poured his wife's. She had watched Sienna laugh at his jokes with the bright hunger of a woman who believed she had already replaced someone and was only waiting for the paperwork to catch up. So Clara had arranged the paperwork. Nicholas reached for the envelope. Clara's attorney, Marianne Shaw, stepped into the room from the corridor. She wore a slate gray suit and the expression of a woman who had never once mistaken wealth for intelligence. "Mr. Ward," Marianne said, "those documents include a petition for divorce, a notice of asset preservation, an emergency injunction against transfer of marital funds, and a litigation hold covering business communications, expense records, hotel invoices, and company devices." Nicholas's hand froze above the envelope. One of the investors, Paul Larkin, slowly set down his glass. Sienna whispered, "Company devices?" Clara heard the fear in her voice and knew exactly which messages Sienna was thinking of. The ones with hotel room numbers, the ones with jewelry receipts, the ones where Nicholas promised her that Clara was too trusting to check anything, the ones where Sienna had called Clara the antique wife. Nicholas stood. His chair scraped against the floor. Everyone out. No one moved. Marianne looked at Clara. "Mrs. Bennett?" Clara rose with no hurry. The black silk of her dress moved quietly around her knees. Nicholas had once told her black made her look severe. Tonight, severe suited her. "No one needs to leave," Clara said. "Nicholas wanted witnesses when he brought her here. He can have witnesses now." Sienna's face flushed. "You are humiliating yourself," she said. Clara looked at her. Sienna was beautiful in the obvious way. Blonde hair arranged in loose waves, smooth shoulders, a cream satin dress that should have been too bridal for another woman's anniversary dinner, which meant the choice had been deliberate. The girl had wanted Claire to feel old. That was almost touching. "Humiliation," Clara said, "is sitting beside another woman's husband at her anniversary dinner and still thinking you are the prize." Sienna's mouth tightened. Nicholas slammed his palm on the table. Soup trembled in every bowl. Enough. Clara turned to him. His face was red now, not from shame but from rage at losing control. Nicholas Ward was handsome in the polished, predatory way that made people excuse too much. Gray eyes, dark hair, a jaw made for campaign photos and boardroom lighting. He had built Ward Meridian from a small real estate advisory firm into a national development brand, and he had allowed every article to say he did it alone. Clara had never corrected them. That had been generous. Tonight, generosity had left the table. You will regret this, Nicholas said under his breath. Clara picked up her small evening bag. I regretted it 8 months ago. His eyes narrowed. 8 months ago? The first night you checked into the Eldridge Hotel with her and charged the room to client relations. Sienna inhaled sharply. Nicholas stared. Clara continued, calm enough to frighten even herself. I regretted it when you told her I had no business instinct. I regretted it when you transferred $2 million into a shell account and wrote expansion reserve in the memo line. I regretted it when you asked me to sign the foundation transfer next week so you could move my voting shares before I noticed. The investors looked at Nicholas. Not with sympathy. With calculation. Margaret's pearls shook in her fingers. Nicholas, she whispered. What is she talking about? Clara answered before he could. Your son thought no one knew about his affair. He also thought no one knew about the theft he was planning beside it. The word theft changed the room. Affairs were scandal. Theft was danger. Nicholas's voice dropped. Careful. I was, Clara said. For 8 months. Then she turned and walked out before anyone could decide how a betrayed wife was supposed to exit. Behind her, Nicholas called her name once. Not Clara. Claire. The old nickname. The one he used when he wanted softness without earning it. She did not turn around. Chapter 2. 8 months earlier. Clara had found the first receipt in a jacket pocket. It was not dramatic. Not lipstick. Not perfume. Not a hotel key card. Just a receipt from a florist. $240. White peonies. Delivery to Suite 1407 at the Eldridge Hotel. Clara had stared at the paper while standing in the laundry room with the dryer humming behind her. Her first thought was absurdly practical. Peonies were out of season. Her second thought was worse. Nicholas had forgotten her birthday 3 days before. For a long minute, she had stood there in the pale afternoon light, holding proof small enough to tear. She could have asked him that night. She could have cried, demanded, accused. Instead, she folded the receipt and placed it in the back of her jewelry drawer. 21 years of marriage had taught Clara something no one praised in wives, because it was too useful to men. She knew how to wait. Clara Bennett had not always been patient. Before Nicholas, she had been the kind of woman who walked fast, spoke directly, and made professors nervous because she corrected them with citations. She had graduated from Wharton at 23, inherited a minority stake in her grandfather's private investment company at 27, and had planned to build housing funds that made money without eating the people who lived inside the buildings. Then Nicholas arrived. He was brilliant, broke, charming, and beautifully wounded by his own ambition. He told her he wanted to build something real. Not quick money, not empty towers, communities. Clara believed him. She brought capital. He brought appetite. For years, that combination looked like love. Ward Meridian began with Clara's family seed money and Nicholas's name on the door, because he said clients trusted a single strong founder story. Clara did not care about the door then. She cared about the work. She reviewed contracts after midnight, rewrote investor decks, calmed lenders, caught errors, and hosted dinner after dinner where men asked Nicholas how he had such instinct. He always smiled and said, I have good people. Good people. Not a wife. Not a partner. Not the woman who owned 41% of the voting structure through a trust he pretended was a formality. The second receipt came 2 weeks later. Lingerie. Not Clara's size. The third was a weekend rental in Newport. Then came the text preview on his phone while he was in the shower. I hate sleeping alone after having you. No name. just initials. S.H. Sienna Hale had joined Ward Meridian 11 months earlier as marketing director. Young, sharp, theatrical. She wore cream blazers and red lipstick to Monday meetings and laughed at Nicholas's worst jokes as if comedy itself depended on him. Clara had noticed her, of course. Women noticed the women who wanted their husbands long before husbands admitted there was anything to notice. But suspicion was smoke. Clara needed fire. So she hired Mary Ann Shaw, not through Ward Meridian's legal department, not through their family firm. Quietly, through an old college friend who owed Clara a favor and knew which attorneys did not blink at powerful men. Mary Ann listened to Clara for 20 minutes, then slid a yellow pad across the desk. Write down every account he can access. Clara wrote for 45 minutes. Personal accounts, joint accounts, foundation accounts, trust structures, property vehicles, holding companies, old family assets Nicholas had once called too boring to understand. Mary Ann watched the list grow. Mrs. Bennett, she said finally, your husband is not only having an affair. Clara looked up. He is preparing to move money. That was the day pain became strategy. Clara went home, made dinner, and watched Nicholas praise the salmon without looking at her. He was becoming careless. Carelessness was a gift. She found the Shell account 2 months later. Then the internal memo. Then the draft transfer agreement giving Ward Meridian's executive board expanded discretion over Bennett Family Foundation assets. Nicholas had scheduled the signing for the week after their anniversary dinner. He thought she would sign it the way she had signed hundreds of documents over the years. After making tea, reading the summary, trusting his explanation, because trust had once been their religion. But trust, once dead, did not resurrect because someone wore a wedding ring. Clara read the full agreement at 2 a.m. Her bare feet were cold against the study floor. Her hands did not shake until she reached page 17. If she signed, Nicholas would gain temporary voting authority over a portion of her family foundation's investment pool, enough to push through a leveraged acquisition he had been chasing for a year. The acquisition would make him famous. It would also expose the foundation to catastrophic risk. He was not just leaving her. He was using her as a bridge, and planning to burn the bridge while she still stood on it. Clara closed the document and sat in the dark. Outside the study, Nicholas came home at 1:43 a.m. She heard him enter quietly, remove his shoes, and pause in the hallway. For 1 second, Clara thought he might open the study door. He did not. His phone buzzed. He laughed softly. Then he went upstairs to shower away another woman's perfume before lying beside his wife. That was the night Clara stopped grieving the marriage and began preparing its funeral. Chapter 3. The morning after the anniversary dinner, Nicholas Ward became a man divided into 3 emergencies. The first was legal. Mary Ann Shaw's injunction had frozen transfers across several accounts. His personal attorney called before 7, furious that Nicholas had not disclosed the affair, the hotel expenses, or the pending foundation agreement. Nicholas stood in his dressing room with the phone pressed to his ear while Sienna sat on the edge of his bed, wearing his white shirt and yesterday's mascara. This is manageable, Nicholas snapped. His attorney did not agree. The second emergency was business. By 8:30, 2 investors from the dinner had requested independent review of Ward Meridian's exposure. By 9, Paul Larkin had postponed a funding call. By 9:10, an email from the Bennett Family Foundation arrived, suspending all pending approvals involving Ward Meridian until conflict review was complete. The third emergency was Sienna. You told me she was passive, Sienna said. Nicholas looked up from his phone. She stood near the window of the apartment he kept downtown, arms folded, blonde hair loose over his shirt. In the early days, that sight had flattered him. A beautiful young woman in his clothes, in his city apartment, proof that he was still desirable, still dangerous, still not the aging husband Clara saw too clearly. This morning, Sienna looked less like proof and more like liability. She was, he said. Clearly not. Do not start. Do not start, Sienna laughed. My name is probably in those documents. Your name is in a lot of things because you put it there. Her face hardened. Careful, Nicholas. He looked at her then. There it was. The edge under the velvet. He had mistaken hunger for devotion, because hunger had been aimed at him. Now that it turned defensive, he saw it properly. Sienna crossed the room and snatched his phone from the bed. Call her. No. Call Clara and fix it. Clara does not fix things over the phone. Then go home. He almost laughed. Home. The word had never sounded less available. Nicholas took the phone back. I need to think. Sienna's lips parted. You mean you need to decide whether I am worth the cost? He did not answer quickly enough. Her eyes shone with anger. You promised me the New York office. I promised to consider you for the role. No, she pointed at him. You said after the foundation transfer, after the acquisition, after Clara was handled, we would stop hiding. Nicholas felt something cold slide down his spine. Do not say that again. Why? Because it sounds ugly? Because it sounds recorded. Sienna went still. For the first time, both of them looked around the apartment as if the walls had developed ears. Nicholas dressed in silence. At 10:30, he drove to the family house in Chestnut Hill. Rain from the previous night had left the driveway shining. The maples were bare. The white colonial house stood exactly as it always had, symmetrical and calm, the kind of house that made people assume lives inside it were orderly. Nicholas used his key. It did not work. He stared at the lock. Tried again. Nothing. The front door opened from inside. Marianne Shaw stood there. Mr. Ward, she said. He took a step back. Why are you in my house? Mrs. Bennett's house, Marianne said. Purchased through Bennett family funds before marriage. You waived claim to premarital residential property in your 2003 agreement. His jaw tightened. Move, no. Where is Clara? Unavailable. This is still my home. Marianne's expression remained pleasant. Your clothing has been packed and will be delivered to your apartment by 4. You may coordinate retrieval of personal items through counsel. You are not to enter the property without written permission. Nicholas looked past her. In the foyer, 2 movers carried sealed garment boxes. On the hall table sat the silver-framed wedding photograph Clara had kept there for 20 years. It was turned face down. That small detail hit him harder than the locked door. She cannot do this. Marianne tilted her head. She already did. Nicholas lowered his voice. Tell Clara to come here. From inside, Clara's voice answered. No. He looked over Marianne's shoulder. Clara stood at the foot of the staircase in a cream sweater and dark trousers, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked tired but not ruined. That offended him in a way he did not want to examine. We need to talk, he said. We had 21 years. Do not be dramatic. Marianne's brows rose slightly, as if noting a tactical error. Clara walked closer, stopping behind the threshold. Dramatic was serving you divorce papers at dinner. This is logistics. Nicholas swallowed. You enjoyed that. No, she said. I endured it. You wanted to punish me. I wanted witnesses. For what? Her eyes held his. For the first time, you could not rewrite what happened after I left the room. He looked away, because she was right. For years, Nicholas had controlled aftermath. He could make anger sound irrational by morning. He could turn neglect into stress, cruelty into pressure, lies into misunderstandings. He was not a monster, he told himself. He was a complicated man doing difficult things. Clara had removed the morning after. The witnesses remembered. The papers existed. The room had seen Sienna. Clara, he said, softening his voice. I made a terrible mistake. For a moment, she almost saw the man he used to be. Or rather, the man she had once built from scraps because she wanted to love someone worthy. Then he added, but you are going too far. There he was. Clara smiled faintly. Goodbye, Nicholas. Marianne closed the door. Not slammed. Closed. Nicholas stood on the wet porch, staring at the brass handle. For the first time in his adult life, a door with his name on the mail did not open for him. Chapter 4. Clara's next move was not revenge. That was what Marianne told her, and Clara repeated it to herself whenever anger tried to dress itself as justice. Revenge was messy. Revenge made the wound the center of the story. Clara wanted control. Control was cleaner. By noon, she had moved into the Bennett Foundation office on the 42nd floor of the Hargrove Tower, not physically, though she spent enough hours there that her assistant joked about ordering a toothbrush. She moved into it in the way that mattered. Every file, every vote, every investment committee, every dormant authority she had delegated, because marriage had convinced her that being useful behind the curtain was noble. She took it all back. The staff noticed immediately. Clara Bennett had always been polite in meetings. Warm. Informed. The person who remembered children's names and sent handwritten notes after hospitalizations. But for years, she had allowed Nicholas to dominate public strategy, partly because he wanted the spotlight, and partly because she had mistaken peace for partnership. The woman who entered the foundation boardroom 3 days after the dinner was still polite. She was no longer accommodating. Freeze all discretionary transfers connected to Ward Meridian, she said. The chief financial officer, Alan Pike, adjusted his glasses. That may trigger external questions. Then prepare external answers. Nicholas will argue reputational harm. Nicholas should have considered reputation before billing hotel rooms to client development. No one spoke. Clara looked around the table. I know many of you like him. Some of you owe him favors. Some of you have accepted invitations from him, donations through him, introductions because of him. I am not asking for emotional loyalty. I am requiring fiduciary discipline. Alan nodded slowly. Understood. Good. She turned to Marianne. Next. Marianne slid a folder forward. The acquisition vote. The room shifted. This was the dangerous part. Ward Meridian had spent 18 months chasing a distressed property portfolio across 3 states. If Nicholas acquired it, he would gain national influence. If the acquisition failed, debt would expose him. The Bennett Foundation's backing was the keystone. Without Clara's voting approval, the financing stack collapsed. Alan cleared his throat. We have not formally withdrawn support yet. We will. Today? Now. The CFO looked at the others. Clara, this will detonate. She held his gaze. No, it will prevent detonation inside our foundation. That ended the discussion. At 2:15, Bennett Foundation withdrew preliminary support. At 2:30, Ward Meridian's lending partner requested emergency clarification. At 3, Nicholas called Clara 17 times. She answered none of them. At 4, Sienna Hale walked into the foundation lobby. That was unexpected. Clara was reviewing a land trust schedule when her assistant appeared at the door with the careful face of someone carrying inconvenience. Miss Hale is here. Marianne looked up from the sofa. Clara removed her reading glasses. Did she say why? She said this is woman to woman. Marianne made a sound that might have been a laugh in a less expensive room. Clara considered refusing. Then she thought of Sienna in cream satin, sitting beside Nicholas at that table, speaking as if Clara's life were a room she had leased. Send her in. Sienna entered like a person trying to remember how confidence worked. She wore a camel coat over a black dress, hair smooth, lipstick softer than usual. Her eyes moved quickly across the office, taking in the art, the skyline, the private conference table, the 2 assistants visible beyond the glass. Clara saw the moment Sienna understood that this office was not symbolic. This was power. And Clara had been sitting inside it the whole time. Clara, Sienna said. Miss Bennett. Sienna blinked. Right. Miss Bennett. Clara waited. Sienna glanced at Marianne. Could we speak privately? No. Color rose in Sienna's cheeks. Fine. She lifted her chin. I came because this has gone too far. Clara leaned back slightly. People keep saying that after I protect myself. Nicholas is not perfect. An ambitious defense. But destroying his company will hurt hundreds of employees. Clara's expression cooled. Interesting. Last week, You were comfortable risking the foundation that funds housing clinics and domestic violence shelters so Nicholas could acquire distressed assets. Now you have developed concern for employees. Sienna's jaw tightened. I did not know everything. You knew he was married. That is not the same. No, Clara said. It is simply the first thing you decided did not matter. Sienna flinched. For a second, the performance cracked, and Clara saw panic underneath. He said you were done, Sienna whispered. Clara's eyes stayed on her. Men often declare a marriage over when they want permission to betray it. He said you lived separate lives. We slept in the same bed. Sienna looked away. He said you did not love him. Clara felt the old pain move once, then settle. He said many useful things. Sienna's hands curled around her handbag. What do you want? From you? Clara asked. Nothing. Then why ruin me? There it was again, the belief that consequences were something Clara had invented. Clara stood. Sienna stiffened, as if expecting an attack. Instead, Clara walked to the window. The city stretched below, glass and traffic, and tiny lives moving in every direction. I did not ruin you, Clara said. You attached yourself to a man who promised you power he planned to steal from me. Now the theft failed, and you are discovering he had less to offer than he claimed. Sienna's eyes glistened, but her mouth remained hard. You think you are better than me. Clara turned. No, I think I was kinder than you expected. That is not the same. Marianne closed the folder in her lap. The sound was soft, final. Sienna understood the meeting was over. At the door, she stopped. He will come back to you, she said. Men like Nicholas always go back to the safest place when the exciting one becomes expensive. Clara looked at her. Then he will find the locks changed. Sienna left. For a long moment, Clara stood in the silence she left behind. Marianne rose. Are you all right? Clara looked at the city. I am not sure. That is allowed. Clara nodded slowly. But I am still not signing anything he gives me. Marianne smiled. That is more than allowed. That is progress. Chapter 5. Nicholas Ward had built his career on entering rooms before anyone else understood what was at stake. That skill failed him on Friday morning. The emergency board meeting at Ward Meridian began at 9. By 9:05, Nicholas knew the room had already decided something without him. The conference table was full. Paul Larkin sat near the windows, with his hands folded and his expression empty. 2 independent directors avoided Nicholas's eyes. The general counsel, Elise Grant, had 3 folders stacked in front of her. Sienna sat at the far end of the table in a navy dress, pale but composed, trying to look like someone invited for strategy, rather than someone trapped inside evidence. Nicholas took his usual chair at the head of the table. No one greeted him. That was new. He placed his phone beside his notebook and forced a smile. This has gotten emotional, he began, but we are not children. We have a business to protect. Paul Larkin looked at him. Then why did you put it at risk? Nicholas's smile thinned. I did not. Elise opened the top folder. We have received notice from Bennett Foundation Counsel that all communications related to the distressed portfolio acquisition, foundation transfers, hotel expenses, and executive discretionary spending must be preserved. I am aware, Nicholas said. We have also received a request from the lending group for disclosure of any conflict that may affect the foundation's prior support. Which is why we need to present a unified position. There is no unified position, Paul said. There is your position, and there is the crater underneath it. Sienna flinched. Nicholas turned on him. Careful. Paul's eyebrows rose. That word seems popular in your house. The room went colder. Nicholas leaned back. My marriage is not relevant to this board. Elise slid a printed document toward him. It became relevant when marital assets were tied to a foundation transfer, when company funds were used for undisclosed personal travel, and when the marketing director was included in communications discussing how to handle your wife's signature. Nicholas did not look at Sienna. That was his mistake. Everyone else did. Sienna's fingers tightened around her pen until the knuckles whitened. I followed Nicholas's instructions, she said. The sentence landed like a dropped knife. Nicholas turned slowly. Sienna. Her eyes were bright with fear and fury. No, I will not be the decorative mistake in this story. You told me Clara never read anything complicated. You said she signed whatever you summarized. You said the foundation was yours in practice. Elise's pen stopped moving. Paul stared. Nicholas felt the room tilt. This is not helping you, he said quietly. Neither are you. The old version of Nicholas might have rescued her then, or silenced her with charm, or smiled at the room and made the whole thing sound like a misunderstanding between passionate people under pressure. But he was tired. And frightened. Fear made him ugly. You were not a child, he said. You knew exactly what you were doing. Sienna's mouth opened. For a second, he saw the dinner again. Clara looking at Sienna's bracelet. Clara naming the hotel. Clara saying she had been careful for 8 months. 8 months. Nicholas had thought he was hiding an affair from a wife who still trusted him. Instead, he had been building a case for her with every careless receipt. Elise closed the folder. The board will need to consider interim leadership. Nicholas stared at her. Excuse me? Paul stood. You are stepping back while council reviews exposure. This is my company. No one answered. That silence was the cruelest correction. Ward Meridian had his name on the door, yes. But it had never been only his company. It had been built with Clara's capital, Clara's patience, Clara's invisible labor, Clara's family credibility, and Clara's willingness to let him look larger than he was. Now that willingness was gone. Paul pushed a document across the table. You can make it voluntary. Nicholas looked down. Temporary executive authority transfer. His vision blurred at the edges. No. Elise's voice was careful. If you refuse, the independent directors can vote. Then vote. They did. It took 4 minutes. Nicholas lost 6-1. The only vote in his favor was his own. Chapter 6. Clara watched the meeting from a private video link in Marianne's office. She had not asked for the link. Elise Grant had sent it through counsel after confirming that Bennett Foundation's exposure gave Clara observer status for the emergency review. Clara almost refused to watch. Then she remembered every evening Nicholas had come home from board meetings and told her nothing important because you would be bored. So she watched. Not for pleasure, for accuracy. When Sienna turned on Nicholas, Clara felt no joy. The scene was too small for joy. Two people who had fed each other's vanity were now discovering that betrayal had poor teamwork. When the board voted Nicholas out of temporary control, Clara sat very still. Marianne beside her said nothing. The screen showed Nicholas standing at the head of the table, hand gripping the chair back. His face had gone flat in the way proud men looked when humiliation reached bone. Clara expected to feel triumph. Instead, she felt a strange grief for the younger version of herself who would have tried to save him from this room. That woman had loved his potential like it was a person. Potential was not a person. It did not hold you at night. It did not tell the truth. It did not protect what you built together. It only kept asking for more time. The meeting ended. The screen went black. Clara exhaled. I thought it would feel different, she said. Marianne poured coffee into 2 paper cups. How? Cleaner. It will. Not today. Clara took the cup but did not drink. What happens next? The firm review continues. The acquisition is dead unless a new capital stack appears. Your divorce proceeds. His counsel will try to negotiate privacy. No gag order. Marianne looked at her with approval. No gag order, she agreed. Mutual non-disparagement at most, but facts remain facts. Clara nodded. Her phone buzzed. Lucas. Her son was 20, studying architecture in Chicago. She had waited to tell him until the legal filings were served, because Nicholas had always been good at reaching people first with softer versions of ugly things. Now there was no soft version. She answered. Mom? His voice was tight. Clara closed her eyes. Hi, sweetheart. Dad called me. Of course he had. What did he say? That you are trying to destroy the company because he made a mistake. Clara opened her eyes. The city beyond Marianne's window looked washed silver by rain. What else? That there was someone else, but it was complicated. Clara almost laughed, not because anything was funny, but because complicated was the flag cowards planted on plain ground. It is not complicated in the way he means. Lucas was quiet. Did he cheat? Yes. The word cost her. She paid it anyway. With someone from work? Yes. The woman from the campaign dinner last summer? Clara's hand tightened around the cup. You noticed? His breath shook. I hated how she looked at you. There were many things grief could do to a mother, but hearing her child say he had seen her humiliation before she had named it was its own blade. I am sorry, Clara said. Why are you sorry? Because you should not have had to carry that question. Lucas was silent for a long moment. Are you okay? Clara looked at Marianne, at the legal folders, at the black screen where Nicholas's public collapse had just ended. Not yet, but will you be? She thought of the locks changed, the frozen accounts, the foundation boardroom, the dinner table where she had finally stopped protecting a man from the consequences of his own appetite. Yes, she said, I will be. Lucas exhaled softly. Then I am coming home this weekend. You do not have to. I know. That was the end of the argument. For the first time all week, Clara smiled. Chapter 7, Sienna Hale, did not resign quietly. She tried charm first, then tears, then threats. By Monday, she had hired her own attorney and released a carefully worded statement to 2 industry reporters claiming she had been misled by senior leadership and had no knowledge of improper financial conduct. The statement did not name Nicholas. It did not need to. Nicholas read it in his apartment at 6:12 a.m., with a headache behind his eyes and 3 missed calls from his lawyer. He called Sienna. She answered on the 5th ring. You used me, he said. There was a pause. Then Sienna laughed. That is rich. You are blaming me publicly. I am surviving publicly. You should try it. He stood and began pacing. You were in the emails. So were you. You encouraged the transfer. You designed it. You wanted the New York office. You wanted your wife's money. That stopped him. Sienna's breathing was sharp through the phone. Do you know what your problem is, Nicholas? You still think you were generous to me. You were not. You offered me a ladder you stole from your wife, and then got offended when I started climbing. His hand tightened around the phone. I loved you. Silence. Then Sienna said, softer and crueler, no, you loved feeling new. The call ended. Nicholas stood in the middle of his apartment. He wanted to hate her. It would have been easier. But the sentence stayed. You loved feeling new. He thought of Clara at 25, sitting cross-legged on his law school floor, highlighting his notes because he was too exhausted to see straight. Clara at 34, pregnant, and still reviewing loan covenants because he said the deal could not wait. Clara at 42, wearing a navy dress to a charity event, while Nicholas spent the evening introducing her to people she had already funded. He had not stopped loving Clara because she became old. He had stopped looking because she became familiar. And he had mistaken familiar for empty. That was not Sienna's fault. That was his. At noon, Nicholas drove to the Bennett Foundation. He did not get past the lobby. Security had his photograph. The guard was polite. That made it worse. Miss Bennett is not available. Tell her I am here. She has been informed. And? She remains unavailable. Nicholas looked toward the elevators. 20 floors above him, Clara was probably in a meeting, reading documents he once assumed she would never understand better than he did. I will wait. You may wait outside. The guard said it kindly. Nicholas almost laughed. He had become a man escorted by kindness. Outside, wind moved between the buildings. Nicholas stood near the revolving door with his coat open and his pride in pieces. After 20 minutes, the lobby doors turned. Clara stepped out with Marianne and a tall man Nicholas did not know. The man was about 50, with black hair threaded with gray, and the relaxed posture of someone who did not need to prove he belonged. He carried a roll of architectural drawings under one arm. Lucas walked beside them. Nicholas's son saw him first. His face hardened. Dad. The word was not warm. Nicholas swallowed. Lucas. Clara stopped, but she did not step toward him. Why are you here? She asked. He glanced at the man beside her. Clara noticed. This is Evan Brooks, director of our Housing Redevelopment Initiative. Evan, this is Nicholas Ward. Not my husband. Not Lucas's father. Nicholas Ward. Evan nodded once. No hostility. No interest. That somehow cut deeper. I need to speak with you, Nicholas said, through counsel. Clara, please. Lucas moved slightly closer to his mother. Nicholas saw it. His own son positioning himself between Nicholas and Clara. That was the moment the cost reached places money could not measure. I am not here to fight, Nicholas said. Clara's eyes were steady. Then why are you here? He had rehearsed answers in the car. Because Sienna betrayed me. Because the board is overreacting. Because we should not throw away 21 years. Because I am sorry. Only the last one was true enough to survive her face. I am sorry, he said. Clara did not look away. I know. Hope moved through him, pathetic and sudden. Can we talk? We are talking. Privately. No. He looked at Lucas, then at Marianne, then at Evan. You want an audience for everything now? The second the words left his mouth, he knew he had ruined it. Clara's expression cooled. No, Nicholas. I wanted privacy for years. You used it to lie. Lucas looked down. Nicholas closed his eyes. I did not come to hurt you. Intent is not a refund. He opened his eyes again. What do you want from me? Compliance. The word was so practical, so unromantic, that it left him speechless. Clara continued. Full financial disclosure. Cooperation with the forensic review. No contact with Foundation staff. No calls to Lucas asking him to manage your guilt. No attempts to enter my home. No using the press to turn consequences into cruelty. Each sentence removed another place for him to hide. Nicholas's voice roughened. And after that? After that, you build whatever honest life remains available to you. Without you. Clara's face softened, and that nearly broke him. Yes. He looked at her for a long time. The winter wind lifted a strand of her auburn hair. She tucked it behind her ear, a gesture he had seen 10,000 times and never properly loved. You really are done, he said. I was done when the soup arrived, she said. The papers were only the announcement. She turned to leave. Nicholas spoke before he could stop himself. Did you ever love me? Clara paused. Lucas's jaw tightened, but she raised a small hand. Let me answer. She turned back. Yes, she said. Completely. That was the problem. I loved you so completely that I kept making myself smaller to leave room for the man you promised to become. Nicholas's eyes filled. Clara, but I have no interest in being small anymore. Then she walked away with their son at her side. Chapter 8. The final hearing took place 6 months later in a courtroom with bad lighting and excellent acoustics. Nicholas arrived alone. His suspension from Ward Meridian had become permanent after the forensic review. He retained a reduced equity interest, but voting control had shifted to an interim executive committee. The distressed portfolio acquisition died. 2 lenders withdrew. 1 investor sued. Veil-sized headlines never appeared, because Clara had not wanted spectacle. But inside the circles that mattered, everyone knew exactly why Nicholas Ward no longer entered a room first. Sienna left the city in April. Her statement had protected her from criminal exposure but not professional consequence. The emails were too clear. Her ambition had been too well documented. The industry did not forgive women like her for failing at the same games it rewarded men for winning. Clara did not celebrate that. She also did not rescue her. Consequences were not Clara's burden to soften. In court, Nicholas wore a dark suit and no wedding ring. Clara wore ivory. Not white like innocence, not black like mourning, Ivory, quiet and expensive, with pearl earrings and a watch that had belonged to her grandfather. The judge reviewed the settlement. Marital property divided. Foundation assets protected. Residential property confirmed separate. No gag order. Mutual non-disparagement. Full cooperation with business review. Nicholas agreed to all of it because there was nothing left to win by refusing. When the judge signed the decree, Clara felt no thunder, no music, no cinematic breath of freedom, just a soft, internal click, like a lock opening. Outside the courtroom, Nicholas caught up to her near the elevators. Marianne paused, ready. Clara turned. 1 minute, Nicholas said. Clara nodded once. Marianne stayed close. He looked tired, not theatrically destroyed, just tired in the plain human way that comes when a person finally has to carry the weight they kept handing to others. I found the florist receipt, he said. Clara blinked. What? In the discovery file. The first one. Peonies. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. Yes. That was when you knew? That was when I started knowing. He absorbed that. Why did you wait? Clara looked toward the courthouse windows. Sunlight lay flat across the marble floor. Because if I had confronted you then, you would have lied well enough to make me question myself. And I was tired of living inside your versions of events. Nicholas nodded slowly. I would have. It was the first honest thing he had said in months without trying to dress it. Clara almost thanked him. She did not. He continued. I used to think you did not need much, that you were content with the house, the foundation dinners, Lucas, the quiet. I was content with loyalty, she said. He closed his eyes. I know that now. Good. The elevator arrived. Nicholas did not move. Clara. She waited. I am sorry I made you prove your worth by leaving. For a moment, the hallway seemed to hold its breath. There were many apologies Clara had imagined over the years. Angry ones, begging ones, strategic ones. This was not enough to change anything. But it was true, and truth, even late, deserved to be recognized without being rewarded. I hope you become someone who understands that sooner next time, she said. Then she stepped into the elevator with Marianne. The doors closed between them. This time, Nicholas did not call her name. Chapter 9. 1 year after the divorce papers arrived with the soup, Clara hosted a dinner in the same private room at l'Orangerie. The restaurant manager had asked twice whether she was sure. She was. Some rooms needed to be reclaimed the way land needed to be cleared after fire. The table was set for 12. Not Nicholas's parents. Not investors trying to measure damage, not a mistress pretending proximity was victory. Lucas came in from Chicago. Marianne brought her wife. Evan Brooks attended with 2 project leads from the housing initiative. Alan Pike brought updated foundation reports and then, after Clara threatened to confiscate them, agreed to behave like a dinner guest. There were candles again. There was soup. When the first course arrived, Lucas looked at his mother. Clara looked back. Then they both laughed. Not loudly. Not because the old memory was funny, because it no longer owned the room. Halfway through dinner, Evan lifted his glass. To Bennett Foundation's first completed housing conversion. Glasses rose. The project had taken an abandoned luxury complex Nicholas once wanted to fold into the distressed acquisition and turned it into mixed-income family housing with legal clinics on the ground floor. It made less money than Nicholas's plan. It made better sense. Clara had visited the building a week earlier. A little girl in yellow rain boots had shown her the window in her new bedroom and announced that she could see the sky without standing on a chair. Clara thought about that often, a child who did not need to climb furniture to see light. That was worth more than a headline. After dessert, Lucas walked with Clara to the window. Rain shone on the street below, just as it had the night the process server walked in. "You okay?" he asked. Clara smiled. "Yes." "Really?" "Really." He studied her face like he was still learning how not to worry. "I used to think divorce meant something failed," he said. "Something did fail. You know what I mean." She did. Clara looked back at the table, at people laughing over coffee, at Marianne correcting Alan's story, at Evan listening more than he spoke. The room felt warm, not because everything had been repaired, but because nothing false was being asked to hold it together. Marriage failed, Clara said. I did not. Lucas's eyes softened. No, you did not. Across the room, the restaurant manager entered quietly and handed Clara a small envelope. For one strange second, the old night flickered. Then Clara saw the manager's smile. A note from the kitchen, he said. They wanted to thank you for the foundation grant to the culinary training program. Clara opened it. Inside was a card signed by 12 trainees, young people who had cooked part of the meal under the head chef's supervision. Several had written short notes in cramped, eager handwriting. Thank you for believing people deserve second chances. Clara read that line twice. Second chances. People misunderstood them. A second chance was not always a person returning to someone who hurt them. Sometimes a second chance was a woman returning to herself. Sometimes it was a room becoming safe again. Sometimes it was soup, arriving at a table and carrying no disaster with it. Clara folded the card and placed it in her evening bag. At the end of the night, she stepped outside beneath the restaurant awning. The rain had stopped. The pavement reflected the city lights in long gold lines. Evan stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets. They had become friends first, careful friends, honest friends. There was something between them now, a quiet possibility. Neither had tried to rush. Clara liked that. After years of being hurried into someone else's ambition, possibility felt best when it walked beside her without grabbing her hand. May I walk you to your car? Evan asked. Clara looked at him. The question was simple. Respect often was. Yes, she said. They walked slowly. No cameras. No audience. No man on his knees. No mistress watching from a doorway. Just a woman in an ivory coat, her son laughing behind her, her work ahead of her, and the clear knowledge that betrayal had not made her smaller. It had only removed the people who needed her to be. Nicholas had thought no one knew. He had been wrong about the affair, wrong about the money, wrong about the woman across from him at dinner. Most of all, he had been wrong about silence. Clara's silence had never been ignorance. It had been evidence gathering its breath. If this story kept you listening, stay close for more stories about quiet women, public betrayal, hidden evidence, and the moment a man finally learns that silence was never surrender.